I want to welcome Andrew Millison from Corvallis to another episode of Conversations with Willi. It's good to see you. I'm not sure how I found you, but I'm
Uh-huh.
happy to talk to you today.
Great.
You have an extensive uh, building and design background, which I'll try to highlight.
hmm
Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do, Andrew?
My name's Andrew Millison, and I mostly am a permaculture instructor these days. I've done a lot of designing and building of permaculture systems, and I instruct permaculture at Oregon State University now, as well as host other types of workshops, and I work with the state government as well, teaching permaculture to the state agency that builds low-income housing developments here in Oregon. So I'm a
Interesting.
permaculture. I'm really a gardener, is what I am actually, and that's that's what I do more than anything. But I wear other hats as well. Yeah.
Tell me about the mandala. It's at your back there on the wall. What is that about? The blue one,
This,
right behind you.
yeah, this is a Weechel yarn drawing,
Uh-huh.
and so I don't know if you know what a yarn drawing is. That's not actually a painting. That's yarn, tiny pieces of yarn pressed into beeswax there.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is actually probably the nicest one that I've ever seen. You'll see these. It's made by the Weechel Indians in Mexico, and this is their creation story actually. And so I got
Hmm.
this from the guy who made it, a Weechel Indian named Matsiwa, and I think he spent 10 months making this,
Wow.
putting the strips of yarn, embedding it into the beeswax there. So this is just like a beautiful piece of art and symbolism for that tribe that I was fortunate enough to end up with. hmm Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to start out with four words, and I want you to react to them because they're kind of controversial, maybe not interrelated. They're gardening, ecology, sustainability, and permaculture. So what are those four words? How do they relate to each other these days for you?
Well, in permaculture, gardening and ecology are one, basically. So, we say that our garden is not really separate from the ecosystem. Our garden actually is a beneficial component to the ecosystem, and our garden enhances the ecosystem and works with the flows of water, sun, insects, soil, wind, pollination, integrated into the ecosystem. Sustainability is a little bit of a controversial word because it's kind of been butchered a little bit and misused. And,
Mhm.
you could be sustainable and you could sustain degenerative practices, right? So I really like to think of regeneration as opposed to sustainability. If we just sustain, if at this point in history, it's too late to just be sustainable. We need to be regenerative, right? And so we need to restore the life force of the planet.
Interesting. Is that life force you mentioned, is that part of the key principles of permaculture for you?
Yeah, I mean, so, care of the earth is the first principle of permaculture. Care of people is the second, principle. And then um, reinvest the surplus from a system back into care of the earth and care of the people. So, I mean, yeah, it's just implicitly sustainable, really.
Uh,
hmm
well, one of the things that I'm working on is the sacredness of permaculture.
Yeah,
I'm finding it a challenging topic.
yeah.
What is sacred about anything to you? What's sacred today for Andrew?
The earth, the water, the air, the plants, the insects, the life force of the earth, my garden, fatherhood, being a father is sacred to me.
Why is it so controversial to some? when you try to talk about the mystical with the science of permaculture?
Well, I mean, Bill Mollison makes it very clear that permaculture is a scientifically based design system, right? And, in fact, I mean, if you ever read Bill's autobiography, Bill really goes into how the woo-woo, he calls it the woo-woo of permaculture, that's not really part of the permaculture design system. And I actually think that that's a really wise perspective, because the thing about the permaculture design system that makes it so democratic, that makes it so easily adoptable across a wide range of cultures, belief systems, religious beliefs, right? And, all of the different ways that people have, categorized themselves and organized themselves. The thing that makes permaculture so democratic is that it's really based on common sense. And that common sense doesn't have any particular religious leanings. And so it makes it accessible to people regardless of what their, mystical beliefs might be. I think that sacredness, the sanctity of life is just implicit in the permaculture design ethics. I mean, care of the earth, care of people, it means that you're holding life on earth as sacred, that we should care for it as our primary directive in, the systems that allow for our survival here on the planet.
Isn't life force, as you call it, a sacred idea?
Well, I think it's sacred, but it's also just practical. I mean, a
Okay,
plant has
good.
life. I mean, if you chop a tree down, it's probably going to die. The life force leaves. So I think life force is kind of a biological reality,
Oh,
And
okay.
so, I mean, that's the thing, is I think that I don't really think there's so much of a division of sacredness and not sacredness. I think that if we just, care for the things around us, we just have an implicit respect for, the trees outside my door and the garden and the air I breathe. And yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
Good. I appreciate those ideas.
Yeah.
How would you say permaculture is supporting a community building process now?
Yeah.
How is it that?
Yeah. Um, part of the design in permaculture systems is also designing the social systems of permaculture. And so that's where, when we get into, we call them invisible structures. It's like any permaculture site that has biological value to it. We're restoring the forest, we're creating ecological niches, we're increasing biomass, we're producing food, we're cleaning water, all of those things. It has to have invisible structures, some sort of human interaction to have the land be available for that permaculture system, to have the resources available, to be able to get trees, be able to get plants. So that's where we get into invisible structures. The structures that have to occur for a biological system to occur, the structures that have to be present that you can't really see, and that's human relations. So, when I design a site, I really think very deliberately about how humans are going to relate, and is the site and is the design going to foster beneficial human interaction. Since I moved to Oregon 3 years ago, I've had the fortune of being able to spend a lot of time just bringing classes to visit Mark Lakeman, who is the, Portland City Repair founder, and seeing some of the social permaculture that's happening there. That's, for me, it's the best examples I've ever seen of how you change the physical environment to actually enhance social cohesion. So, in some senses, I think that people are like, we're basically like rats in a maze. And we will just respond to our environment. And if we have a wholesome environment where there's places to gather, we will gather and we will talk and we will relate and we will naturally build community. If we're put in this like box-like maze where there's never any place for the meander of human social interaction to happen, then we become less social. We become, crime rates go up and isolation goes up, and, we become less effective as a species. Yeah.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
You have a fellow playing guitar on your permaculture site.
Yeah.
Is that you?
No, that's wait, I just met him the other day. Uh David, um his name's like escaping me right now for a second. Yeah,
I
he
think
just took a permaculture course at Lost Valley Educational Center, and he's just a really awesome guy. And I was actually up at the Village Building Convergence giving a little talk a couple nights ago, and I looked out, and there he was in the audience, right? Dave Griswold. And
yeah.
so I was like, hey, do you have your guitar? I was like, this is my dream come true. And so he ran out to the car and got his guitar and played his permaculture design principles song for the whole crowd. It was great.
Well, what I'm getting at is another one of my interests, and that is how we can create new symbols
Yeah,
and songs
yeah,
and poetry
yeah,
to bolster that invisible connection
yeah,
that you talk about,
yeah,
that socialization.
yeah.
Can you speak to that? Can you speak to the artistic side of permaculture
Yeah.
and what's coming?
Well, you want to hear one?
Sure.
Hello out there in Radio Land. I need your attention. You're listening to reports from the new civilization. This new civilization, you must understand, is one in which we respect living creatures and the land. Today we have an interview with a guest whom we can trust. It's Mr. Big Mountain all the way from Earth's crust. Mr. Mountain, please, we request your information. Relate to us the fate of the human civilization. Say, yeah, man, you know me been here for a long time. Say, long before the beginnings of humankind. Me seen the rise and fall of nations. Me sit with a mountain's patience and now a message from the earth I will provide translation. Say, human civilization is evolved in the creation of a planet at a peace with all of our relations. We got a ways to go, but of this you got to know, that if you work to heal the earth, you'll reap just what you sow. Say heaven on the earth as above and so below. This garden can be yours if you choose to let it flow. Wait. Choose to let it flow? Just what does that mean? We humans need to be taught. We humans need advice that can be heard, felt, touched, or seen. Mr. Big Mountain, we need a what, a how, or who. Tell us, Mr. Mountain, what can we do? Say you can begin in your very own backyard. To say you plant yourself a garden even if the ground is hard. Create a household compost and your plants will grow most, and cook the food you grow to share because you are a good host. Respect the four elements, earth, air, water, and fire. Reducing your consumption is something to which we aspire. Say be good to yourself and work for planetary health, and know that in the world you don't need money to know you have wealth. Well, thank you, Mr. Mountain, for your information. That's all, folks, for reports from the new civilization. Please stay tuned for our upcoming broadcast and think about a new world where the earth is first at last. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So
Check it out. You have Big Mountain, Heaven,
yeah,
Garden, Compost. These are all sort of symbols of the new permaculture movement.
right. Well, when I went to Prescott College, I took an eco-psychology class with Laura Sewell, who's a really awesome teacher. And, we did this council of all beings. I don't know if you
Uh-huh.
heard of that, but it's like where everybody takes on a character, and then you come to this council as a character. Like, so the mountain, or someone comes as the water, and you talk about what's happening on the planet, but not from the perspective of human. You take on the perspective of some other, part of the land in order just to get yourself some kind of empathy for natural systems. And so I did the
Right.
mountains. That a lot of these, I had a whole band with my best friend Jacob, and we had this whole band where it was like the mountain was speaking and singing all these different songs. And so I feel like, some element of powerful mythology that comes out of the just natural connection to the earth that permaculture provides is, this mythology of like, if the trees could speak, what would they say? if the mountain could speak, what would the mountain say about, human civilization? So, yeah.
So are you one to back off from politics, or are you someone who wants to take permaculture into politics now?
Well, I think that permaculture, like I said, like the neutrality of permaculture as a common sense design system,
Right.
is its greatest strength, because permaculture can be brought in, and it's like common sense is common sense, whatever political party you're in. However, you still have to agree on those first three ethics, right? Care of the earth,
Right.
care of people, reinvestment of surplus. When you get into reinvestment of surplus back into care of the earth and care of people, you do get a little bit political, because all of a sudden we're saying, we do not support gluttonous overconsumption. We do not support taking surplus and bombing the planet. We support taking surplus and regenerating the planet with surplus. But I am working with the government right now. And, like I look like politically, Governor Kitzhaber got in, and that means that the Oregon Housing and Community Services is going to be funded for sustainability practices. If Governor Kitzhaber had not been elected, and Dudley, it was a very close race in Oregon, the funding to build sustainable, permaculture-based low-income housing developments, might not be there. So as much as I don't actually really like to be involved in politics, I'm finding that on the level of invisible structures, I am influenced by politics, whether I want to or not, basically. Yeah.
How do you balance profit taking versus regenerative practices then? It sounds like permaculture is anti-profit almost. Is that
Well,
true?
no, I mean, it's not anti-profit, right? It's like, people should be supported for their actions to live an abundant life. But, the permaculture principle of apply self-regulation, right, and accept feedback, right? And, David Holmgren's 12 permaculture principles. So we talk about applying self-regulation. That means, what do you do when you have surplus? What do you do when your basic needs are taken care of, right? And, you have a nice place to live that, it's like voluntary simplicity, frugality, right? Is that applying self-regulation? So,
Doesn't sound like capitalism though, Andrew. It's not capitalism, and I understand it.
well, I don't really,
Capitalism is
yeah,
about
I don't
excess.
really know. I don't really know, and like it's hard to even go there, because it's kind of like Einstein said, you can't really solve a problem with the same paradigm that you created the problem with. So I feel like the capitalism, so like these big isms, paradigms are like, I don't really know which of those isms is really the best thing for the planet. None of them have really worked thus far. So
That's that's a good way to say
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Some people I've talked to recently think permaculture is not only um, male dominated,
yeah.
but it so sort of elitist because you have the wherewithal to be kind of a permaculturist. It's not a mainstream occupation.
Yeah,
What do you
and
think?
yeah, I mean, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of like sort of self-starting and dedication to actually make your life and your living in the permaculture world. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's elitist. I would say it's more like rigorous, and you have to
Yeah.
really put your time in, and you have to some degree be poor, you know? I
Okay.
mean, hey, I mean, I know a very few people that are like making like a comfortable American living, um, doing permaculture. And so there's a certain point where it's like the dedication to this design system as this healing medicine for the planet. You may find yourself comfortably financially, but you probably won't. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I don't really think it's elitist in that way. There are some awesome female permaculturists. There's people I work with, like Jude Hobbs and Marisha Auerbach. I never met Penny Livingston, but she's, one of the most successful permaculture teachers, in this country. Robin Francis, right? Starhawk. I mean, there are a lot of really powerful, Rosemary Morrow. There's a lot of really powerful female permaculture teachers out there.
Okay.
It seems like there's certainly more males proportionally. That may be because there's just more outspoken males. Maybe, you know, I mean, because we talk about this because, you know, I do a permaculture teacher training course, and I teach that with Jude Hobbs, and Jude is one of the kind of senior female permaculture teachers in this country. And so we talk a lot about gender issues and why are there more males, you know, permaculture teachers. So, you know, but I mean, the female aspect is certainly like strongly represented in the permaculture movement, in that the teachers that are females are really powerful and they're really awesome teachers. And so women coming up in the permaculture movement certainly have really strong role models to look to. You know? And then I think that permaculture design, to some degree, especially when you're designing for the human social environment, is just by its nature tapping into the feminine creative aspect, you know?
Yeah. Most would say nature is largely feminine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's balanced. It's just as much masculine as feminine, but, you know, it's there's a certain intuitive sense to design that, you know, you might say that if masculinity is like the decisive force and femininity is like the intuitive or the connected force, you know, that, I mean, both of those elements are necessary to really create functional designs, especially functional designs that people are going to inhabit, males and females. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, sir, it does. I'm interested in your point of view on large corporate agriculture versus permaculture, because it seems like it's coming up a lot now.
Yeah.
How do you influence corporate agriculture to change its ways?
Yeah. Well, you know, permaculture systems, of course, are like inherently more productive per area of land than large corporate agriculture. And to some degree, I feel like large corporate agriculture is falling apart of its own accord, right? Just with its dependence on fossil fuel, of course. There are some really incredible large-scale permaculture design systems that, when corporate agriculture gets tuned into, like the keyline design system, the work of P.A. Yeomans, the work of Darren Dougherty. Darren Dougherty is the modern-day keyline design emissary. And, I mean, if you look at the large-scale examples of permanent agricultural systems that are being implemented across the planet, there really is an out for corporate agriculture. There is an evolutionary step that corporate agriculture can take to continue to farm really broad-scale landscapes and be regenerative at the same time, right?
Really, how do they deal with the water issue?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the keyline design system, but, you know, P.A. Yeomans in his groundbreaking book, Water for Every Farm, I mean, it's basically, there's a quite a complex system of keeping the water in the highest point in the watershed as possible, and having, you know, identifying the highest point in the landscape where water can be intercepted, putting a pond there. The water spills gradually across the landscape to the next pond, to the next pond, to the next pond. You basically zigzag the water back and forth across the landscape in both absorbing it in the soil and holding it in water catchments, where you have gravity-fed irrigation, you know, for cropping in the broad-scale landscape. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's something that, like, if you really want to get into the technicalities of the system, it'd probably take me like about an hour and a half or 2 hours to really explain. And I have whole presentations with, you know, digital animated PowerPoints where it's like, look, this is, you know, the keyline design technique. But I guess the point I would like to just make is that permaculture does have proven broad-scale land restorative and incredibly productive techniques that corporate agriculture could adopt en masse. And that was part of the purpose of when Darren Dougherty first came to the U.S. to teach the keyline system back in 2007. His thing was like, hey, we're doing this in Australia. We have 50, 60-year-old keyline design systems. America needs to adopt keyline design practice on the broad-scale landscape for planetary climate stabilization, basically. Mm-hmm. Because mm-hmm. these broad-scale agricultural landscapes where we're plowing, we're cropping, we're applying fertilizers and pesticides and, draining the water over, hundreds of thousands and millions of acres, this is where we need to address for, soil building, carbon sequestration, tree establishment to stabilize the climate of the planet. Right? And so I really respect that a lot. And I'm trying myself to influence the broad-scale land use patterns here in the Willamette Valley. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you think this is a movement, not a revolution?
I'm not really sure what the difference is between a movement and a revolution.
Good answer.
Yeah. I mean, I got the dictionary right here. I'd have to look it up. You can really see. I think a movement and a revolution are kind of the same thing. Tell me what's the difference between a movement and a revolution?
Oh, I suppose a movement is a slower crawl. Revolution is faster with economic and social, impacts that take place very quickly and displace people. So I think that's the way I would say
right.
it.
I would say that ideally this is a movement. I would say that we're headed towards a revolution, but hopefully the movement is chugging along enough of a pace that when the revolution happens, people will be able to be sort of pointed in the right direction. And I think the revolution will be an energy revolution where we just don't have the energy we need to support ourselves in the ways that we've supported ourselves. And, we will have to rapidly transition to these locally based permaculture systems. So, permaculture is like the cushion for energy descent. Energy descent is the long-term lessening of our energy sources throughout the rest of our lives and our children and our grandchildren. We're going to be living with less and less cheap energy as time goes on. And, how are we going to survive without, cheap fossil fuels? Well, permaculture is that cushion. Permaculture is the roadmap.
So it's not only a future, it's a transition.
Well,
right?
Yeah, it's all of the above.
Right.
It's like, we could continue on the road we're on and destroy the whole planet. Not the road that we're on, but the road that mainstream civilization is on. And we can basically deplete the soils, pollute the water, cut down the forests, heat the planet, poison the oceans, poison the air, radiate, radioactive fallout, all the things that, the trajectories that we're doing. Or, we can take that other road, and that other road, permaculture provides a roadmap for the other road to move human civilization to a place where we are living within our means. We are, producing the things that we need to survive without polluting and degrading the planet. In fact, we're producing the things we need to survive while restoring and regenerating the planet.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that. Mm-hmm. Well said.
Thanks.
Andrew, I'm going to end our conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And your rap and your smile and everything else.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
I will post this up and network it out, and hopefully bring you some more clients. How's that?
Awesome.
Is that good?
Yeah. That would be awesome.
Make some more money.
My website is beaverstatepermaculture.com. So
right. It's outstanding.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate having the talk.
Right on. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.